Trigger alert, trigger alert. In this podcast, the hosts make light of serious situations that happen in real life. This may or may not include sexual assault. If you expect these topics will make you feel uncomfortable, we urge you to press stop and listen to some other episode of Caustic Soda. Thanks. Previously on Caustic Soda.
In high school, Mark never worried about getting dates. He just did. He never worried about making school teams. He just did. He never worried about getting good grades. He just did. And he never worried about getting AIDS. He just did.
And now, the conclusion. I'd like to thank our researcher helper people, humans.
Okay.
For
Are they
helping
all
out with this.
humans? Did you just exclude our non-human researchers?
We've only met them over the internet, some of
true.
them. So
Yeah,
they
it
could
could be a dog.
They could be advanced AIs
Androids.
or a dog, as
Yep.
the New Yorker points out.
Androids?
Especially Allison and Dave helped with this episode. I hope I'm not forgetting anyone.
Hopefully you're human.
Hey, it's up to you.
Oh, yeah, I guess. Hey, no judgment.
They can self-identify.
Yeah.
In the history, there's a little timeline of AIDS. In the 1930s, sometime in the early 1930s, a form of simian immunodeficiency virus, SIV, was transmitted to humans in Central Africa.
Somehow.
The mutated virus was later identified as the first of other human immunodeficiency viruses, HIV-1.
Yeah, the latest figure that I saw, because they actually want to guess, they actually gave it a year.
A year of what?
The year that this happened?
It's called a spillover event. When you have a zoonosis, when a virus crosses from another animal into humans,
Right.
it's called a spillover event.
Okay.
The entire HIV-1 type M, all of that infection, all that misery, the huge pandemic came from this one event.
August 15th, 1933.
And I was going to guess a year?
1926.
That was very specific. I would hate to argue against it. But I'm going to go 1979.
The best estimate, 1921.
Oh, okay.
Plus or minus, so actually anywhere between 1908 and 1933. Probably
I was in there.
in southeastern Cameroon, or it's now Cameroon.
Right.
Right. At the time, ironically, it was called SIV land.
Well, oddly enough, pretty much every African monkey, all the primates, have a type of SIV, but it's kind of misnamed for them because it doesn't cause immunodeficiency.
Right.
Now, if you take it out and put it into something else, like if you take an SIV from a sooty mangabe and you put it into a rhesus macaque, which is an Asian monkey, they don't have it, you get full-blown AIDS really fast.
Right.
Oh, okay.
So for a long time, people were wondering, it was thought that chimpanzees didn't get AIDS; they just got the SIV.
Right.
A lot of careful work kind of like, no, they
They
get
can
it.
get it.
They
They
get
just-
AIDS too.
They just don't get the type that's in them.
So, well, no, they can get it from their type of thing. So it suggests that chimps haven't had it all that long either, because it's like the Star Trek problem, right? You find yourself on an alien
Well, what
spaceship.
time is it on?
Yeah.
That's the Star Trek problem.
Well, because
All the time.
you get there and you're in an alien spaceship and you have to make it fly, and you look at it and some of the controls look kind of familiar, so you start pushing buttons, right? And sometimes you think you're getting the cigarette lighter and it's the flamethrower.
Right.
The same thing with the virus. It finds itself in a new host. It wants to manipulate that host the way it always did, and it's not very good at it yet.
Right.
So the disease that it causes is a lot worse.
Okay.
It's pushing
so-
all the wrong buttons and making your head explode.
Exactly, because the virus doesn't really care. All it cares about is using you as a resource to
Right.
infect somebody else.
To propagate.
Yeah, and if it kills you before you do that,
That's actually bad for the virus.
the virus dies
Right.
too. You have to be able to pass yourself on. On the other hand, if you get yourself into an entirely new species, a new host, there's a whole bunch of new resources that you didn't have before, so it's kind of worth the risk if you can
Right.
make it work.
Pushing the buttons.
Exactly.
In the 1940s and 50s, there is some evidence that AIDS made the rounds in Europe following World War II, predicated on a wave of children dying from PCP. Its presence is almost a sure sign that the patient had AIDS. It is believed that the disease spread by the then relatively common practice of reusing needles. Surprisingly, approximately only one-third of the children died, suggesting the virus they contracted had not yet changed into the fully lethal version we recognize today.
Okay.
We're not sure about that because, there are other, as we said earlier, there are other things that can suppress your immune system as well.
Right.
It's speculation.
What you really want is some blood or tissue from that because our methods are good enough now you can go back and retroactively test things.
Right. So just blood and tissue from a child that died in 1945.
Unfortunately, you want to preserve it somehow. Like, how many people keep blood in their freezer for that long?
So we really need to find some kind of psychopath killer from 1940s Germany
Who
stuffed one of these kids in his freezer.
in a bottle.
It's like, oh, that's good now? Oh, yeah, no, I've got him in my freezer.
Where
Where
was Peter Lorre at that time? You know?
Tell you what.
There is a guy who did it, but he stored that child's body in AIDS brine.
Yeah.
And so
Curses.
tainted the sample.
In 1959, the first known case of HIV in a human occurs in a man who died in the Congo.
Yes. Though we don't know that he died of HIV. This is a famous one. Remember we were saying about storing blood in freezers?
Yeah.
This is what happened.
Okay.
They were testing them for something else. They were looking for blood diseases. And in the Belgian Congo.
Right.
There was a blood sample. They stuck it in a freezer. Years later, we came back. They didn't record his name. They didn't record what he died of or anything like that. But they were able to test it and confirm that it was HIV-1. This is a sample known as ZR59. 59 for 1959, and ZR because it was found in what then became Zaire.
Right.
These viruses were already like 12% different. This is why we know that the virus had been in humans since the 20s, and had been diverging.
Hold
Since
on.
that time.
You're saying that life changes over time in
If
some
you don't believe in
fashion?
evolution, you're going to have a hard time explaining this. I tell you, yes.
You know what I want to know is between 1959 and 1960, if waffles in the Congo went from really good to not so good. Because they were no longer the Belgian Congo, they ended up the Democratic Republic of Congo.
Yeah.
And everyone knows Democrats are no good at making waffles. So I'm sure their waffle technology just went completely in the toilet.
That's actually why it ended up in Haiti, though.
Because of
Waffles?
Well, Belgians, anyway.
Belgians.
Belgian
Which we
Congo.
call waffles in some sort of pejorative, I
In
guess.
Belgium, when the Belgian Congo gained its independence, even for colonial governments, the Belgians treated their people pretty badly. So suddenly they're a free country. Most of the Belgians left. They went back to Brussels because they realized they're not going to be really welcome here very much.
Right.
Unfortunately, they never educated the local people. It was part of the policy there. So suddenly you lost all your bureaucrats, your doctors, your engineers, your entire professional class buggered off back to Belgium.
Right.
So, oh dear, how are we going to run a country now?
Right.
Well, there's a friendly country in the Caribbean, Haiti. They're black. They speak French already. They're willing to come here because we have more money because even then Haiti was still very, very poor. They came over to the Congo, and when they went back home,
They took HIV with them.
They took that strain B, which is uncommon in Africa, and it went from Haiti to the States, from the States to Canada, from Canada to Western Europe, Australia, and all that.
In the 1960s, HIV-2, a viral variant found in West Africa, is thought to have transferred to people from the sooty mangabe monkey in Guinea-Bissau.
Different virus, different spillover event.
Right.
1982, a case study in Southern California published by the CDC in Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report.
Okay. Wow. That is
it's gripping reading, let me tell you.
I can imagine. Suggested that multiple...
We should get a subscription
for Caustic Soda in the Caustic Soda mailbox. Suggested that multiple outbreaks of pneumocystis pneumonia and Kaposi's sarcoma were due to a sexually transmitted infectious agent that was initially labeled gay-related immune deficiency. The media also referred to it as gay plague.
It's kind of a newsletter. It just says, here in these places we've seen X many deaths and disease of this cause, and it lets physicians kind of know what's coming and track things.
There was that very unfortunate spelling mistake in that first headline about advertising the gay plaque.
The gay plaque.
Yeah.
That's coming.
Yeah.
Toothbrush sales went up, though.
1983, the CDC determined transmission of HIV was a sexually transmitted and bloodborne illness and ruled out casual contact. This was important because before this point, HIV patients were ostracized, and in healthcare, they were often poorly treated by healthcare providers who would even refuse to care for some HIV-infected patients. 1984, San Francisco, Los Angeles, and New York announced that they are closing down all the bathhouses due to high-risk sexual activity in order to prevent the spread of HIV.
Couldn't they have just handed out free condoms?
Maybe.
Well, you can hand out free condoms.
You'd have to be able
can't-
to use them, yeah.
Yeah, I was about to
Yeah.
say, you can lead a dick to water, but you can't make it put on a
Well,
condom.
use this or die, right?
Well, it's
like,
just
I'm not a fan of condoms myself, but when you hand me one and go, use this or die, okay, sure.
Well, and that was one, some of the original AIDS prevention messages. The reason it got established in why is it a homosexual population to start with in here as opposed to heterosexual in Africa? You have no way if you're gay to have long-term relationship or get married or anything like that. So, and all guys. So with no risk of pregnancy. You didn't use a lot of barriers.
Oh, yeah, you get a gonorrhea, you just get that shot.
Exactly. At that time, both gonorrhea and syphilis, it was a penicillin shot, and none of them were very resistant yet. So, why would you use them? So it was the virus just got there, rubbed its hands, and went, oh boy, this is the best of all possible worlds.
1985, Rock Hudson dies of AIDS, giving the disease a face. The Screen Actors Guild announced that open mouth kissing was a possible health hazard.
What?
Yeah, no.
It's not, but they announced that.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, okay.
Well, I suppose if you have a cut in your mouth and they have a cut in their mouth, and so it's non-zero.
So far,
but
it's not zero, but there's never been actually a documented case of it happening that way. So,
2008, 18% of the adult population of South Africa had HIV. The policies of then-President Thabo Mbeki's government were directly responsible for the avoidable deaths of more than a third of a million people in the country. From the late 1990s, Mbeki turned his back on the scientific consensus that AIDS was caused by a viral infection. He came under the influence of a group of maverick scientists known as AIDS denialists, most prominent among whom was Peter Duesberg from California. AIDS, he said, was caused by poverty, bad nourishment, and general ill health.
Yeah.
Wait, general ill health or genital ill health?
General.
Your general ill health, that's a major disaster as a commanding officer.
Yeah.
The solution was not expensive Western medicine, but the alleviation of poverty in Africa. He rejected offers of free drugs and grants. His ban of antiretroviral drugs in public hospitals was responsible for the premature deaths of over 330,000, plus 35,000 HIV-infected babies were born who could have been protected from the virus and would probably have a limited life.
Yeah, just like, climate change deniers and evolution deniers, we've had AIDS deniers as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And speaking of South Africa, call back to our Dangerous Superstitions episode.
Okay.
The virgin cleansing myth we've talked about before.
Yeah.
The mistaken belief that having sex with a virgin girl cures a man of HIV, AIDS, or other sexually transmitted diseases. The myth is a potential factor in infant rape by HIV-positive men in South Africa.
God.
In addition to young girls who are presumed to be virgins because of their age, people who are blind, deaf, physically impaired, intellectually disabled, or who have mental health disabilities are sometimes raped under the erroneous presumption that individuals with disabilities are sexually inactive and therefore virgins.
Now, Kevin, you said, did you just see Book of Mormon?
I did.
Because they have a song about this.
They do?
It's in there a lot, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, for anybody who hasn't seen Book of Mormon yet, the plot is, of course, Mormons, if call back to our Mormon episode, they have to go on a mission. They go somewhere in the world where they preach the Book of Gospel, and they try and get converts, and these two young Mormons, one who is like kind of a superstar Mormon preacher, and the other is a pretty much worthless Mormon preacher, get teamed up, and then they're sent to Africa in AIDS-infected country with a warlord who is, committing reprisals against locals, and they're there to make converts. And so the worthless one in the classic sense of Mormonism it succeeds because he just starts making up stories that are in the Book of Mormon that don't actually exist.
Right.
In order
As opposed to the rest of the Book of Mormon.
in order to win over the locals, and to great comedic effect.
But there's a song in there about how I'll give you my AIDS, and people are trying to have sex with his daughter who doesn't have AIDS.
Yes, it is a musical, and so there are lots of songs, and it's by the South Park creators.
Right.
So the songs are in terribly bad taste, but I found them hysterically funny.
Biological warfare and AIDS.
10 years later, you're going to get something that's going to maybe make you die.
Well, that's one of the denial things, was always that AIDS was something that was cooked up in the lab. If it was, these guys were the worst bioagent designers ever.
Right.
Well, warfare may be a strong word.
Okay.
So starting off with Brandvley Prison in the Western Cape.
Okay.
Is notorious for widespread sodomy by HIV-positive prisoners. South African prison gangs include the fearsome Numbers Gang, who are using HIV infection by rape as punishment in a grim ritual known as slow puncture. Gang tribunals would sentence errant gang members or prisoners who refuse to join them to be raped by HIV-positive inmates. The offender's anus is cut open so it bleeds, thus ensuring infection.
Oh God!
Even without the infection, just that heel, like getting a scab there and having a heel.
whenever I have a scab, it's kind of itchy anyway.
Yeah.
But like itchy butthole, oh.
And it's like happening for weeks, and you have to poop past it the whole time. Yeah, I know.
So it's going to get infected. Oh, God.
Welcome to Caustic Soda, ladies and gentlemen.
Whoa.
It's going to be a rough ride.
Jesus. But then imagine you have to be the guy that has to have sex with that bloody butthole as well.
There's not a lot of other choices there.
Maybe
too,
that's your kink.
Right.
Well, I mean. And they were saying if you really wanted to give this guy HIV, just taking a blood sample and injecting it would work better.
Yeah.
Listen,
you can't give prisoners needles. That would be dangerous.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
I have a pretty short list of boner killers. Oh? And I did not have bloody butthole in there, but I'm adding it.
Right.
Like, I imagine that I would be incapable.
Really?
If I were a gang member and I was HIV positive,
right.
and say, okay, it's your turn to rape the bloody butthole, it'd be like,
can't get it in.
You're going to have to help me out here, boys.
Take a rain check on this?
Yes.
I'm just going to cut my finger and stick that in there.
Yeah, there you go.
Sometimes the rape would be carried out by one person, sometimes by several. They give him a slow puncture, meaning he will die over a long period of time. Mm-hmm. If that inmate did then die in prison of AIDS-related conditions, it would be recorded as a natural death. The number of prisoners who died of natural causes rose 528% over the course of 7 years, from 186 in 1995 to 1,169 in 2002.
Crap.
Jesus.
An increase considerably higher than the 38% increase in prison population.
Right.
Yeah.
The poor hygienic conditions caused by overcrowding are placing high demands on the immune systems of prisoners, which seem to contribute to the escalation in the number of natural deaths.
Sure.
Even the most healthy person would find it difficult to remain healthy if he or she was locked up in some of these prisons.
Wow.
Added to this was the increased number of HIV and AIDS prisoners admitted from outside prison.
Yeah, because I'm sure there's a pretty high prevalence of IV drug use and, high risk lifestyles and whatnot.
Not as I mean, one of the reasons that the AIDS tends to be a heterosexual disease in Africa is that in a lot of countries, not only is it illegal to be homosexual, you could be punished by death for it. So there's less activity, and also not a lot of intravenous drug use because nobody can afford it.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess that's a good point.
Now, criminal gangs, I don't know.
Also, not a lot of people admitting that they were having homosexual sex.
Well, exactly,
right?
that's true.
Right.
Yeah, of course.
There's another case of New York's Newshawn Williams. Williams had sex with dozens, perhaps even hundreds of women after learning he was HIV positive.
Oh, sweetie.
He infected at least 14 women, and 2 of his children were born with the virus, but the actual number may be far higher.
Right.
Although Williams' prison sentence was up in 2010, the state has kept him behind bars as a danger to society. A trial is currently attempting to sentence him to indefinite confinement.
Right. Because if he gets out, he will start having unprotected sex with people and giving them HIV.
Right.
His track record certainly suggests that this might be the proper decision.
Well, there's always a debate because the other side is that you don't want to put too much criminalizing this because then people are going to say, well, I'm not going to get tested because I don't want to know and be held responsible for that kind of thing too.
Right.
But yeah, there are cases like this where it seems to be willful.
There was a Law and Order episode about it, so you know that.
It's a thing.
It's a thing.
And Gayton Douglas, the so-called Patient Zero, was
yes.
infamous for continuing to have unprotected sex after he was diagnosed. According to pioneering gay American journalist Randy Schultz, he would turn up the lights in the bathhouse room, show his Kaposi's sarcoma, and say, "I've got gay cancer, I'm going to die, and so are you." He claimed to have had more than 2,500 sexual partners in his life.
This is the famous Canadian flight attendant. So he in the book and the band played on. This is where he was first called Patient Zero.
Right.
It's not because some people think that he's the one who brought HIV to North America. It's more that they were able to trace his contacts and show this web of how this disease was spreading, and it looked like it was spreading by sexual contact.
Right.
And he was the center of this web, so he was dubbed Patient Zero.
Right.
But yeah, because he traveled a lot, had no emotional ties, he did more than his fair share.
Sure.
Is there anything sciencey we missed?
Yeah.
The only other thing was that the reason that this causes this is the fact that the virus is sneaky. It's actually attacking. Not only is it attacking your immune system, the system is supposed to be fighting it. Mm-hmm. It goes after a particular cell, CD4 cells. They've got a CD receptor on them. And these helper cells are they're some of the key cells in orchestrating the immune response. So it's essentially you're taking out the generals, right? Mm-hmm. And the rest of the immune system starts to kind of flail around a little bit. The technical definition of AIDS is when your CD4 count, which is usually around 1,200 cells per mil, goes down below 200. Now you're no longer just HIV positive. Now you actually have AIDS.
So 200, not AIDS. 199, AIDS.
Got
Bingo.
it.
Important.
Got it.
Good
Big
to know.
distinction.
You got to put the line somewhere.
Yeah.
Well, exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
200, proto-AIDS. Almost AIDS.
Got it.
Guys, help! Can you hear me?
I hear you in my headphones, but I don't see you, Torin. Where are you?
I was just sitting at my computer smashing random buttons on my keyboard, and somehow I got stuck on the internet.
How do you know you're in the internet?
Oh God! There's a maze, and the walls are all just wireframes. The road is made out of ones and zeros. Also, the lawnmower man is chasing me on a light cycle, and dubstep is playing all around me.
Well, that's cyberspace.
How do I get out of here?
See if you can find a note to jump to CausticGear.com. We control that site.
Oh, okay. I see a bunch of giant doors with 8-bit keyholes. Let me just swim through this waterfall of algorithms. Here we go, CausticGear.com. Oh, it says enter password.
Oh, let me give that to you.
I got it, Joe. Ah, that did it. The gate is opening. Oh my goodness. Look at all this great stuff in here. I see the Pay What You Want, Lesser of Two Evils Marathon MP3s. I see Caustic Soda t-shirts.
Did you see the Axavans graphic novel anthology, which was in part drawn by you and written by me?
Oh, yeah, there it is. It's covered in grid bugs.
Focus, Torin. Look for a giant gate shaped like a USB port.
Yes, there it is. Wait, I see a bunch of floating pixelated swords flying towards me.
Oh, damn it, my antivirus software. Got to turn it off before it kills Torin.
It's too late.
In the news.
Ding.
2010 Berlin. German researchers who used a bone marrow transplant to treat a cancer patient with the AIDS virus have declared him cured of the virus.
Whoa.
A stunning claim in a field where the word cure is barely whispered.
Yeah.
The patient who had both HIV infection and leukemia received the bone marrow transplant in 2007 from a donor who had a genetic mutation known to give patients a natural immunity to the virus. Nearly 4 years after the transplant, the patient is free of the virus and it does not appear to be hiding anywhere in his body.
So the bone marrow transplant was to fight the leukemia, but because the donor had a genetic predisposition to fight HIV, he got a twofer.
Exactly. Well, it was actually done on purpose. This fellow has said he had leukemia. They thought his best chance was a bone marrow transplant, which is not something you do lightly because to do it, you have to kill off his own bone marrow. So if the transplant doesn't take, you're left with no immune system and pretty much going to die. But he had HIV anyway.
Right.
So they looked for one that a donor that was A, of course, compatible, and B, there is a mutation in a gene called CCR5. When the AIDS virus is trying to get into your cell, the little proteins on its surface look for a receptor on the T cell.
So Creedence Clearwater Revival cannot get AIDS.
Not if it's a mutant Creedence.
Right. Okay.
Because what happens is the virus attaches to this CD4, it's called. And that kind of brings it closer. And then there's the second receptor called CCR5. That's actually a chemokine coupled receptor or something like that. And it grabs the virus and pulls it the rest of the way in. This mutation basically makes it so that it can't do that second docking maneuver. And so the virus can't get into your cell.
Proud Mary, keep on immuning.
Yeah. And so he got, he's cleared. He's now actually come out as a AIDS educator and activist. And nobody else is going to be cured this way, but it does sort of give you a little bit of hope at least.
Yeah, we're not exactly going to be able to make a marrow farm out of that guy.
No, this is probably not going to happen. In fact, they have tried it with a few other patients, and it hasn't worked with anybody else.
AIDS researchers have rejected the approach on any kind of scale for patients with HIV. A bone marrow transplant is a last-ditch treatment for cancers such as leukemia. It requires destruction of a patient's own bone marrow, itself a harrowing process. Ooh, a marrow harrow.
Yes.
And then a transplant from a donor who has a near-exact blood and immune system type. Months of recovery are needed while the transplant grows and reconstitutes the patient's immune system. It's not practical, and it can kill people, said Dr. Gallo of the Institute of Human Virology, who helped discover the human immunodeficiency virus that causes AIDS.
Right.
It is possibly a cure, that's for sure, but you won't know for absolute certainty until the person dies and undergoes extreme genetic analysis of post-mortem tissue.
Because it could be hiding somewhere in the body and just not being seen.
Pop culture. Kevin, what did you watch?
Well, I've seen Philadelphia,
right?
And this is where it should just be called Tom Hanks Gets AIDS.
Tom Hanks Gets AIDS.
See, I wanted to watch Philadelphia, but I ended up with a Philadelphia Story instead. Good film too. Not really the same though. Yeah,
very, very different. But he gets the sarcoma and all the rest of that stuff. So he gets the blotchy skin and whatnot near the end. Of course, the plot of the film is that he is fired from his law firm where he is a hotshot lawyer.
Okay.
Because they find out that he's gay, and so he sues for discrimination or wrongful dismissal.
Yep.
And of course, he gets sick from AIDS and is dying
during the course of the
trial. And will he survive to see justice done and all the rest of that jazz? And
came out in 1993 before there were revolutionary drugs that helped save the lives of many people with HIV and AIDS.
Really, the only problem with this movie that I see is they got the classic moment where the main partner at this law firm, so this person who's been a lawyer for like 40 years, snaps on the witness stand and basically gives up the ghost and admits that it was discrimination and he deserved it and blah blah blah, right? So that's kind of that's the one critique. Everything else, Denzel Washington plays the lawyer and he's the only one who'll take Tom Hanks's case and he's afraid to shake his hand and the whole nine yards.
Yeah.
And so he's kind of a foil for the misinformation and discrimination that people in this condition suffered from in the era, and so it's well done. With the that one caveat about that one moment where you're like, come on, couldn't you have been a little more creative? Denzel's good, but he's not that good.
I watched the South Park episode Tonsil Trouble.
Okay.
Ooh, okay.
Your tonsils got AIDS?
While having his tonsils removed, Cartman is accidentally infected with HIV from a blood donor.
Got it.
Oh yeah, that happens.
He attempts to gain support and pity of those around him, but is unsuccessful because the AIDS awareness fad has been replaced by concern about cancer. So it's not in anymore to have AIDS.
Yeah. Got it.
Yeah, it's so last year.
Kyle thinks this is ironic and that Cartman deserves to be punished because he's always so horrible.
Right.
So Cartman plots revenge by drawing some of his own blood with a syringe and putting it in Kyle's mouth as he sleeps.
It sounds kind of like the one where the chickenpox episode where the parents are getting all the kids to hang out with Cartman so that they all get chickenpox. When the kids find that out, they give their parents herpes by having that prostitute kiss all their glasses,
nice.
all their drinking glasses.
Nice. So, of course, there's some conflict there.
Right.
Cartman has done research which leads him to believe that a cure for AIDS lies in Magic Johnson's longevity since becoming infected with HIV. Mm-hmm. Upon investigation, Kyle and Cartman find that Johnson sleeps regularly with huge piles of cash in his bedroom because he does not trust banks, and cash eventually proves to have the ability to neutralize HIV. Laboratory scientists experiment with a concentrated dose of about $180,000 shot directly into the bloodstream on the boys, which disintegrates the HIV, implying the solution to any problem is to simply throw money at it.
Got it.
Certainly doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
From a research scientist, of course.
Well, I mean, we're looking at the global AIDS, and maybe a third of the people who could benefit from the antiretroviral therapies that we've got now, which are the cocktail, only about a third of them are getting it. I mean, half of the others, they don't know they've got it, so there's money because you need to test.
Right.
And secondly, making these available to people, especially in Africa and places like that.
Yeah, these South Park guys seem real up to speed on AIDS and all the political ramifications of where the money's being spent, whether it's being spent properly. Methinks someone protesteth too much.
Uh-oh.
I don't know nothing for sure. I ain't saying nothing. We can't do an episode on HIV AIDS without talking about Dallas Buyers Club. That is what the entire movie is about.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about this movie.
You haven't seen it?
I haven't seen it either. I've heard of it. But
Who's buying what in Dallas, and why do they have to form a club?
All right. So Matthew McConaughey is a drug-using, hard-drinking, having sex with anything that moves and cowboy in Texas.
Okay.
And he's feeling ill and getting skinny and the whole nine yards, and he goes in, gets tested, and they tell him he's HIV positive. And
when is this? When is it set?
It's set in the 80s. This is based on a true story.
Okay.
This is based on a true story.
So not a lot of options for him at this point.
Well, they at the hospital where he is, and I think it's Dallas.
Yeah.
what with the title being Dallas Buyers Club. There's a hospital there that is doing a trial, but they've got everybody in the trial has HIV or AIDS, but one of the groups is getting the real drug cocktail, and one of the groups is the control.
Right.
So they are basically giving them a death sentence because they're not curing them.
What about the power of positive thinking?
So,
placebo effect.
It's
a thing.
So Matthew McConaughey says, well, this is bullshit. I'm not going to put myself in this trial. And he can't even get in the trial anyway. Yeah. But he's even like, well, if I get in the trial, there's a half a chance that I'm getting a placebo. So that's not going to do me any good. So he goes to Mexico and finds this guy who it purports to have access to all the drugs that they're using in these trials anyway, and you can just buy them from him in Mexico. So, but the FDA hasn't approved them.
Right.
So what he does is he starts the Dallas Buyers Club. And what people do is they pay for a membership in this club, and as a member, you get free drug cocktails. And that is circumventing the law because he's not selling drugs.
Oh, I see.
Okay.
Just being a member has its benefits.
You pay for membership?
You pay for membership.
Okay.
You don't pay for the drugs. So this is evidently legal, right?
Is Tupperware also involved? They have Tupperware parties?
There's piles of drugs probably in Tupperware. Okay. Right? Yeah. So there's just all these gay prostitutes and HIV drug users and all these people that this pretty close-minded, good old boy cowboy is now associating with, and these are now all of his best friends because now that everyone knows that he has AIDS,
he goes on a journey of health and of open-mindedness.
Yeah, he's a bit of a journey of discovery.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't really feel like he did open up a little, but at the same time, like, didn't they say partway through that he was like, this is better than AZT, and like basically giving them it, and it didn't feel like the movie touched this enough, but basically giving them not medicine.
Yeah, well, there was a controversy around this whole thing about, because, the guy in Mexico, was talking about AZT is not as good as what I'm giving you.
Oh, I see.
Right?
Well, the problem, AZT, which was really the only one drug they had at the time, it does inhibit the replication of the virus.
Right.
Because when that RNA polymerase is going along, it grabs the AZT. It thinks, how you're doing DNA, you got A, G, C, and T. Well, it thinks it's a T.
Right.
And it sticks it in there, and it jams up the machinery.
Right.
Problem is, it is effective, the viral little drop, but the virus gains a resistance to it very quickly.
Right.
So it works for a little while, and then it kind of stops working.
Right.
So that's part of the reason that these days the way these and treating works so well is you hit it with a bunch of different drugs, and they're all hitting it at a different thing, and so it's hard for it to get resistant to all of them at once.
So they didn't get into that much into this. It was more the human story, but there is a debate inside the movie that's very briefly touched on about whether AZT or this other cocktail he's getting from this Mexican guy is the better way to go.
To me, it felt like they were just glossing over the fact that he might be selling them absolute nonsense, because he totally has this kind of con man side to him. Yeah. He certainly had AIDS himself.
Yes,
I think does he die in the end of the movie? I know he died of AIDS in real life.
At the end of the movie, he's not dead yet, but they do the little crawl at the end where they talk about how many years later he died, which is not very much longer.
He lived 5 years after his diagnosis. I looked it up. The actual Ron Woodruff that it's based on.
But this is Matthew McConaughey's Oscar-winning performance, and he was pretty amazing in it.
It's a great performance.
Performance. Jared Leto won for Best Supporting Actor, and he was amazing at this cross-dressing transvestite gay prostitute.
Oh, wow.
Who had a serious drug problem.
I think he was fully transgendered, or he, the actor, was playing. I can't remember. As opposed to transvestite, I believe that because there was a lot of controversy over that. People were saying
she was trying to save money for the procedure.
That's right. So they were transgender.
They were transvestite. So you're right. Okay. That's correct. So it was. It's well worth watching.
Watch
for
it
sure.
Watch it for the performances, maybe less than the history, say.
Yeah. Well, I think Joe's point is it's clear. They kind of breeze over this AZT versus this other thing he's getting in Mexico. But I see what the point of the view of the filmmaker is. that's not really the point.
Yeah.
The point is these character dynamics.
Yeah.
And whether or not this cocktail is working better than AZT or not was kind of academic to the filmmaker, I'm sure.
I
Yeah.
disagree with that filmmaker. I
Right.
think that's important.
Well,
like
you
it tells
can
me
make
whether or
Dallas
not
Buyers
this is a-
Club 2, the Joe Fulgham version.
Well, the thing is, I agree with you about all the other stuff. The
Yeah.
performances, I think the writing and all that stuff. And they didn't deny my problem. It was just they were kind of like, hey, if this bugs you, we're not going to deny that might be true, but let's move on to the movie.
Did you
Yeah.
did you get the impression that he believed in this cocktail?
Woodruff certainly believed.
He did. Okay.
Absolutely.
But was he fooling himself?
Right.
Oh, yeah,
Right.
maybe that's
He
possible.
wanted
but he
to
wasn't
believe
really a
so
con
badly.
man so much as that he was selling what he
certainly was a con man.
But he- but
he
he
had
was
no
part of
problem
it.
with lying to people, but I think he was also lying to himself. Yeah,
Right.
for sure. In the movie, anyway. I don't know
Yeah.
about real
Yeah,
life.
yeah, of
Yeah,
course.
but in the movie, like, because none of us knew Ron Woodruff in life.
I don't know.
So, but in the movie, certainly Ron Woodruff believes what he's pitching. And again, whether or not he's fooling himself or whether or not he truly believes it to be real, I don't know.
I want to talk about Hemogoblin.
Emo Goblin.
Really?
Featured in the DC comic The New Guardians in 1988 when the understanding of AIDS was in its infancy.
Oh, God, this is going to be politically incorrect, is it not?
Hemogoblin was an HIV-positive vampire used by a white supremacist group to infect minorities with the disease.
Oh, my God.
He manages to transmit HIV to the ambiguously gay superhero Extrano before dying of AIDS himself, mercifully within a single issue of the comic.
Why is the ambiguously gay superhero's name? Why does it mean out?
That's a little odd. And how did if
Did
you were
anybody
drinking blood, I'd see you more likely to get AIDS. How is he transmitting it by drinking?
Superpowers.
Yeah,
Yeah, well, yeah, he's a villain guy. He's a goblin. He's a hemogoblin.
Oh, well, all right then.
So,
Did anybody read The New Guardians? Is anybody a fan of this
No,
series? Because was this one of these series that it doesn't take itself seriously, or?
Oh, I'm pretty sure
Oh, it was very
serious.
sincere.
Yeah.
Comic book creators have done some very questionable things in times gone by. Hemogoblin. This is not right.
We hardly knew ye.
And why did it have to be employed by a white supremacist group?
Because you had to
infect
make sure that it was bad guys.
minorities.
Yeah.
This is a villain.
This is a villain
tell
on
by the pointy
so
white
many
hat.
levels. Yeah. That's interesting. I'll throw a shout out to a webcomic that is no longer functioning, but I loved for many years, called Hate Song.
Hate Song.
And in one of the inaugural strips, a character is injecting vodka with a syringe in order to get drunker faster.
Right into the bloodstream.
But then an IV drug user actually takes his drug syringe and pulls some vodka out of there. And he goes, "Hey, you're going to get AIDS in my vodka."
Oh.
And so in order to test whether or not there was AIDS in vodka, he gives his, "Hey, have a pull off my vodka." To his white trash friend, who takes one sip and then spits it back in his face, saying, "There's AIDS in this vodka." It's thoroughly distasteful humor. I don't even know if you can find it anywhere anymore, but my brother Mike owns the original art for that particular strip. That was by far the best strip of the whole series. So,
Who made that comic? Do we dare say?
a guy named Fred Grissom.
Oh, okay.
Wink, wink.
It's such a weird feeling to know you're alive. It's such an awful feeling. You're dying inside, and when you wake up, starting to say, I hope I don't go crazy today. It's such a bad feeling, an ominous feeling, a feeling you know that we'll be back when the week is new. And we'll have more gross facts for you. And you'll have things you want to hear about. We will too.
Caustic Soda was recorded by Mike Leeson while being investigated for racketeering. To comment on episodes and for links and show notes, visit CausticSodaPodcast.com. Support the podcast by donating on our site or visit patreon.com/causticsoda like I did. Visit us on Facebook, tweet us on Twitter @CausticPodcast. Email us at info@CausticSodaPodcast.com. I'm Ryan Smith. Thanks for listening.